Inshallah, we'll start in just about a minute. All right. We're going to go ahead and start, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, please recite a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Assalamu alaikum to everybody who is with us. Assalamu alaikum to everybody who's in the group chat as well. And inshallah, we will continue with our story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. I want to take a moment first to recite Surah Fatiha for the marhumin and marhumat of everybody, and especially the people, the brothers and sisters who had sponsored the night for tonight and last night as well. So I'll go through last night's sponsors and then inshallah the sponsors of tonight as well. Brother Nadir and Sister Shirmeen Himani and family, Dr. Saqib and Sister Fatima Ibrahim and family, as well as 3 anonymous brothers and sisters. And also the sponsors for tonight's program, Brother Rizwan and Sister Kiran and family, Brother Sayyid Akbar and Sister Tazeen and family, Brother Hakim and Dr. Asiya and family, Brother Zishan and Sister Minaz Rizvi and family, and another Bandi Khuda. Let's take a moment to recite Surah Fatiha for all of your marhumin and marhumat, especially the marhumin and marhumat of these brothers and sisters. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. The dua of today I will go through very quickly before we delve into today's topic, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma waffiqni fihi limuwafaqati al-abrar. On this day, Ya Allah, give me the opportunity, give me the chance, give me the tawfiq to be aligned with those righteous servants of yours. Let me live my life like those special servants of yours. وَجَنِّبْنِي فِيهِ مِن مُرَافَقَةِ الْأَشْرَارِ. And on a day like this, distance me from being around and being acquainted with those bad servants of yours. وَآوِنِي فِيهِ بِرَحْمَتِكَ إِلَى دَارِ الْقَرَارِ. And shelter me on a day like this with your mercy until the day or the moment of residence comes. Refers to the moment where we leave this world and we go into the next world, right? Because the Quran refers to the hereafter as Darul Qarar, the place of residence where you actually settle down. We're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a day like this to shower us with His mercy, to put us within the refuge of His mercy until the day that we leave this world. بِإِلَهِيَّتِكَ, by the right of you being who you are, Ya ilaha al-alameen, the Lord of the worlds. Inshallah, Ameen. So to do a quick review of what we had been discussing along the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, we reached this point where Yusuf and Zulaykha were in that room. And the Quran said, وَغَلَّغَتِ الْأَبْوَابَ وَقَالَتْ هَيْتَ لَكَ. And the Quran said that these doors were locked. And Zulaykha turned to Yusuf and told him to approach her. And that there's nothing standing in between the two of them. This is roughly where we ended. Then we know that Yusuf, he started to run away, and Zulaykha also started to run. Of course, the reason why Yusuf was running and the reason why Zulaykha was running was very different from one another. Yusuf was running for one reason, Zulaykha was running for another reason. And that just goes to show you that in life there might be people who look like they're doing the same thing, but in reality they're not really doing the same thing, right? Yusuf was running away from sin, Zulaykha was running to demand sin from Yusuf. Nonetheless, they ran towards the door, وَاسْتَبَقَ الْبَابِ وَقَدَّتْ قَمِيسَهُ مِنْ دُبُرٍ. And as he was running, Zulaykha got a hold of the clothes of Yusuf, and the clothes of Yusuf was torn a little bit from the back of the clothes. وَأَلْفَيَا سَيِّدَهَا لَدَى الْبَابِ. And then they found the wife or the husband of Zulaykha at the door, and this conversation started to happen. We said that Zulaykha, she automatically assumed and spoke in this conversation as if she has automatically assumed that Yusuf alayhi salam is guilty. That's why she never had this discussion to even tell her husband Potiphar that, listen, when you weren't around, Yusuf came around to attack me. He came around, right, to have this immoral relationship with me. That's not what she said. She automatically jumped to the punishment of Yusuf alayhi salam. She automatically said, tell me, what is the punishment of someone who does something like that to your wife when you're not around? So it's as if she had taken that as a done deal. And this was the cleverness that Zulaykha really had. And this cleverness is going to come up even more throughout the story, especially today, of how Zulaykha was able to manipulate people, of how Zulaykha was able to change plans or set up plans. This was a talent that she had, and of course she was using it in a negative manner, but at the end of the day, that is a talent that she had, and the way she went about it was very clever from a worldly perspective, of course. This is exactly why when Potiphar was, stuck with this situation, and Yusuf alayhi salam told him to ask the little infant that was in that household as to what has happened here, and the infant said, listen, if it's torn from the front, then what Zulaykha is saying is true. If it's torn from the back, then what Yusuf is saying is true. Potiphar, at the end of this, he said, Inna kaydakunna adim. He said, you are plotting, you're planning, it's very sophisticated, it's very complex. In other words, Potiphar knew his wife, and he knew that she is the type of person that can come up with these sophisticated and elaborate plans in order to fulfill that desire that she is trying to desire. Okay. Then Potiphar turned to Yusuf, and he wanted to put out this fire out, essentially. He told Yusuf, a'rid an hada, you turn away from this, you don't even talk about it, and you don't bring it up. And that's the same thing that he also told Zulaykha, and he added that Zulaykha, what you did was wrong, you committed this mistake, you are to repent for this mistake of yours. And of course, this is something that Potiphar didn't want anyone else to find out. Okay. But the reality of life and the way things actually happen in this world, unfortunately, is that there are always those who will take some information, even though they know they're not supposed to spread it, even though this information was supposed to stay hidden. They will take this information and then they will start to speak of this information in different gatherings and in different houses and in different places. And this is the problem that Zulaykha came across as well. Because the verse of the Quran then says, وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ. Then some of the women, and it's interesting, the Quran says fil Madina, some of the women in the city. This means that these were people who were influential within the city. That's why the Quran is adding fil Madina. Otherwise, of course, the women that the Quran is talking about are in, that area of Egypt, right? But the reason why the Quran adds this qaid, as they say, this condition of fil Medina, the women in the city. That means the women who are influential in the city. وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ امْرَأَةُ الْعَزِيزِ تُرَاوِدُ فَدْهَهَا. They then started to speak within their own little gatherings, within their own little cliques, as they say, within their own little circle of friends. They started to speak to one another and say, listen, the wife of Potiphar, this high-ranking official, she has been struggling with her servant. She has been approaching her servant. And we said one of the most important lessons to be learned from this part of the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is that as horrible and as wrong as the deed that Zulaykha wanted to make it happen was, what is even worse is the fact that these women went and publicized it. And in Islam we know that if someone wants to end up doing something wrong, a lot of times the person who then takes that secret, if they're doing it secretly and they don't want others to find out, if the person who takes that secret and shares it with others, this person carries a much greater of a burden of sin compared to the one who was doing it in secret. Yes, the only exception to this is a situation where the person has done it secretly, right? And the person who's sharing it, of course, they're sharing it because it's necessary, because that's the only way that they can stop it, because it's hurting others, because it's creating problems in the community. Yes, there are situations like that where it needs to be shared. But even in those situations, does it mean you go and share it with everybody? Does it mean you go and share it with everybody that you know, even strangers? No, it means that you share it with those individuals that you feel as if they can be of help for you, they can be of assistance to you. Having said that and setting that aside, when it comes to this situation, of course, these women, they weren't sharing because they felt like they could do something about this. They were sharing because they were jealous, because they felt like, you know, the wife of Potiphar, she's living this luxurious life, and now look, she's after her servants. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit more. Okay, so the first thing that we learned from this part of the verse was that we are not to take the secret of another person and publicize it and share it, because whatever that person did, when you publicize and you share it, a lot of times you end up doing something 10 times worse than what that person did. And that's why we have that hadith, al-ghaybatu ashaddu min az-zina. Ghaybat carries so much negative weight that when it comes to these huge sins that we have in Islam, still ghaybat, if it were to be compared to them, still ghaybat carries more of a burden of a sin for an individual compared to some of these big sins that we have in Islam, including the one that Zulaykha was involved with as well, or she wanted to be involved with. Okay, this is where we had ended essentially last week, or the day before yesterday, and we will continue from here. Okay, these women started to speak with one another. وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ امْرَأَةُ الْعَزِيزِ تُرَاوِدُ فَتَاهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ. They said, listen, the wife of Potiphar, she is, you know, she's really stuck with this servant of hers. And then they continued, they said, قَدْ شَغَفَهَا حُبًّا. They said, you know what has happened? Not only she's made this advancement, she has made this suggestion towards Yusuf alayhi salam. Not only has she wanted to be with her servant. In fact, from what we hear, as they say in their circles normally, from what we hear, it seems as though Zulaykha is actually in love with him. It seems as though Zulaykha really, her heart is full of the love of Yusuf. Shaghafa means when something enters into something else. Qad shaghafaha hubba means her whole heart is engulfed with the love of Yusuf. Wa inna lanaraha fi dalalin mubin. And what she does doesn't really make sense to us. She's kind of lost. Now, this tone of the women in Egypt shows us that their tone when they were speaking had a tone of judgment to it. What they were saying essentially was that, you know, if Zulaykha was after somebody else, maybe that would have made sense. But first of all, Zulaykha is a female and Yusuf is a male. So Zulaykha shouldn't be chasing Yusuf. That's what they were saying. Zulaykha should be sought after. She's the one that other people are supposed to show their affection for her, not the way around. That was one thing that they were judging her based on. Second thing that they were judging her based on was that, listen, Zulaykha is not just in love with another person, she is in love with her servant. And this would bring such humiliation to Zulaykha. But you can also understand this from the tone of the women in Egypt, is that they were judging the situation. Why do I say they were judging the situation? Because they had never seen Yusuf. They didn't even know who Yusuf was. They just know Yusuf was some servant, and apparently he looks good, because you can be sure that once the story got out, you can tell that they must have also talked about the beauty of Yusuf alayhi salam. But they had never seen Yusuf. They never knew who Yusuf was. They had never interacted with Yusuf. And this is where that judgment comes into play. Because when you haven't experienced a situation yourself, you are not to speak to someone from a moral high horse. Now, this doesn't mean that if someone, na'udhu billah, for example, commits a sin, and I haven't been in the same exact situation as that person, that I cannot point to that sin and to that deed and say this deed was a wrong deed. No, you can. That is what Islam is all about. Islam is there to tell us what deeds are correct, morally good, and what deeds are immorally or morally incorrect. That we have in Islam. It's no problem in that regard. So I can look at the deed and say this was a wrong deed that this person committed. But can I speak to this person from a moral high horse, from this perspective that yes, I speak to him as if I have never done anything wrong in my life, and as if with this one mistake that he made, he has ruined his whole life and his whole relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can we speak in that manner? No, we don't have the right to speak in that manner. Because we haven't been in that situation. You never know. Sometimes if you were tested with the same test as this individual, the same test that this person failed with, you might see that you might fail even worse. As the women in the city of Egypt and in the area of Egypt will see themselves a little later in the story. That they will fail this test a lot worse even than Zulaykha failed this test. So when we speak to others and we see maybe someone has done something wrong, it is completely fine and okay to acknowledge that what they did was wrong. There's no doubt about that. But then do you speak to them as if you were in that situation, you will be able to pass that test easily? You can't speak in that manner. And that's something we have to be careful about. We can't speak as if when we come across these tests, it's a piece of cake for us, because you don't know. A lot of times you have not been in that same situation. And I will add this, even if you have been in that situation, the way the test is for one person, depending on their character, their weaknesses, and their strengths, is going to be different from the way it is for others. Maybe you've been in that situation before, but you have a strength in that aspect of your life, and another person is in the same situation as you were before, but that person, when it comes to that aspect of their life, they're weak. They're stronger in other aspects. But when it comes to this aspect, they're weak. And because of that, they fail in this aspect. Doesn't mean that you sit there and you speak to them as if you never fail and they're always failing. That's one extreme that you will have. And then the other extreme is where people go to this extreme where they say, you know what? Never say anything. Never say this person committed a sin. Why are you judging them? No, this is not a form of judgment. It's okay in Islam to judge the deed of an individual. It's okay to look at the deed and the action and say this action was wrong. But then to speak to a person from a moral high horse, that is where Islam does not agree with at all. And unfortunately, we have that. We have that amongst those who practice the religion of Islam, and is one of those things that hurts the religion of Islam more than anything else, really. Having said that, these women, they were judging a situation that they had never even come across. You're saying that we think, you know, the wife of Potiphar and Zulaykha, we feel as though she's lost. Well, have you been in that situation before? Do you know what it's like? Have you even been around Yusuf before? The answer, of course, was no. Okay, so then the verses continue. Having these guys underestimate the situation, Zulaykha then, of course, she gets feedback. She has her people in the city. She hears that these women are chit-chatting about her, and they're saying these things about her. So the Quran then says, فَلَمَّا سَمِعَتْ بِمَكْرِهِنَّ. Then when Zulaykha started to hear the makr, the negative planning, the negative plotting of these women. Why was this a makr? Because they weren't saying it out of sincerity. They were saying it because they were jealous. They didn't like, it was the jealousy that was getting the best of them. that, the wife of Potiphar, when you have someone who's there up there in the ranks from a worldly perspective, what happens? People naturally, they become jealous of this person. Okay, so Zulaykha realized the jealousy that these women have towards her. And when she heard this jealousy in the form of this chit-chatting that they were doing, Zulaykha again used her cleverness to then change the situation around, right? Change the table around so that then she could be the winner again. So what did Zulaykha do? Zulaykha, they keep looking for having this affection for Yusuf. You know what I will do? I will have them interact with Yusuf. But the way she did this was different, of course, from the way she was interacting with Yusuf. And this is a delicate point in the story. You have to understand, Zulaykha had a heads up that Yusuf was going to look the way he was going to look. Because Zulaykha had Yusuf in her house since he was maybe 9 or 10. Since before he was a man, so to speak. Before he was an adult. But now, the women in the city of Egypt, now when they come across Yusuf, and when Zulaykha wants them to interact with Yusuf, they are going to see Yusuf for the first time ever in this format where he is already a grown adult. So there's a difference there. Zulaykha had a little bit of a heads up. She knew that Yusuf was going to be attractive. But these women don't know that. In fact, they're sitting there, they're underestimating the situation to begin with. So Zulaykha came up with this elaborate plan that she would say, you know what, in order for me to get these individuals to really understand what it's like to see Yusuf and what it's like to be around Yusuf, and do it in such a way where they can't lie about it later on, what I will do is I will prepare a gathering, I will prepare a meal, and then I will have places for them to sit. وَأَعْتَدَتْ لَهُنَّ مُتَّكَأً وَآتَتْ كُلَّ وَاحِدَةٍ مِّنْهُنَّ السِّكِينَ. And she gave each and every one of them a knife. And it seems as though, when the Quran mentions this part in particular, it seems as though this was part of the plan of Zulaykha, to have each and every one of them have a knife. Because it's interesting, the Quran doesn't speak of any other detail in this gathering, right? And it also doesn't say that the women had a knife. It says Zulaykha gave each and every one of them a knife. It seems as though Zulaykha could have anticipated that they were going to do something with these knives. Okay, Zulaykha set up this gathering, and when it came to a part where they were maybe going to have fruits or whatnot, she passed out these knives. And when she passed out these knives, and maybe these women were busy, having their fruits or peeling their fruits, then Zulaykha came and said, وَقَالَ تِخْرُجْ عَلَيْهِنْ. Then Zulaykha said, now is the moment I have to get Yusuf out in front of them. And that means that they had not seen Yusuf before that point. Even though Yusuf was in the house, it seems as though Zulaykha had hidden him from the women who were coming for this gathering. وَقَالَ تِخْرُجْ عَلَيْهِنْ. He said, Zulaykha said, now is the time for you to now go upon these women. And so then Yusuf starts to walk out. فَلَمَّا رَأَيْنَهُ أَكْبَرْنَهُ. The moment these women saw Yusuf walking into this gathering, they started to speak of his beauty. They started to glorify him. أَكْبَرْنَهُ. And then the Quran explains exactly what did they say. وَقُلْنَا حَاشَى لِلَّهِ. They said, حَاشَى لِلَّهِ is an equivalent of what we would say Subhanallah or MashaAllah. They said, Allah, God is glorified. مَا هَذَا بَشَرًا. Zulaykha, what you have in your house, this is not a human being. We had heard Yusuf was a human being. We had heard he's a good-looking human being. مَا هَذَا بَشَرًا. This is not a human being. إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا مَلَكٌ كَرِيمٌ. This is an honorable angel that you have in your house. This is not some human being you have in your house. This is some heavenly being that you have in your house. Now keep in mind, brothers and sisters, that when these women said this, and the verses of the Quran don't point this out, but we know from the story that they started to, the Quran also mentioned this, وَقَطَّعْنَ أَيْدِيَهُنَّ, and they started to cut their hands with these knives. When they did this, this was all before Zulaykha had even said anything. See, it's one thing for Zulaykha to even come into this situation, have Yusuf walk into this gathering, and people are mesmerized, and then she would say, listen, this is that Yusuf I was talking about.
These women did not even give Zulaykha a chance to speak yet. Before she could even say anything, they automatically gave up. They automatically said, listen, what you have in your house, this is some angel. This is some heavenly being. This is not a human being that you have in your house. Before Zulaykha could even come around and get around to the idea of, this is the one that you guys kept saying I shouldn't be in love with, and I shouldn't be loving him and having this affection for him. Before Zulaykha could even open her mouth, these women essentially gave up the game altogether. Because before she could even speak, they said what? They said, "Ma hada illa," they said, "Ma hada bashara in hada illa malakun kareem." Whatever this is you have in your house, this man is an angel. He's not a human being at this point. Okay. Now you see that the tone of the women in Egypt, when they're speaking to Zulaykha and Zulaykha is speaking to them, is now going to change very heavily. Why? Because before, Zulaykha was on her own team and the women in Egypt were on their own team. But now that they have professed to Zulaykha the type of love and affection that even they have for Yusuf now it seems as though Zulaykha is speaking as if they're both on the same team. It's interesting. The tone of Zulaykha has changed fundamentally. So take a look at the next verse. What does the next verse say? قَالَتْ فَذَلِكُنَّ الَّذِي لُمْتُنَّنِي فِيهِ. She said, listen, this is the same one that you guys were blaming me about me loving him, having this affection for him. This is that thing that you guys were blaming me for. But then take a look at how Zulaykha just completely opens up to them, as if these guys weren't even jealous a couple minutes ago. Why? Because they've already professed their love for Yusuf. Then Zulaykha started to speak. She said, فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي لُمْتُنَّنِي فِيهِ وَلَقَدْ رَاوَتُهُ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ. And guess what? I've been approaching him and making this suggestion to him over and over again. Why is Zulaykha opening up this easily? Why is Zulaykha speaking as if she's speaking to her close friends? It's because at this point, everybody knows what Yusuf is. Everybody knows how beautiful Yusuf is. There is no more, I don't think you should be in love with Yusuf because maybe he's not that good looking. They already saw what Yusuf is like. The tone that Zulaykha is speaking with now it's as if she's speaking to another person who's on her team. Yeah, listen, let me tell you something. Let me open up to you. وَلَقَدْ رَاوَتْهُ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ فَاسْتَعْصَمْ. I've approached him many times, but every time he has shown isma, he has shown purity from himself. Every time he's pushed me back. Every time he has rejected me. Okay. Then the verses of the Quran continue. وَلَئِن لَمْ يَفْعَلْ. But let me tell you guys, all of you guys, this. And of course, this is in the presence of Yusuf alayhi salam. Right? Yusuf is standing there. And when he is standing there, what does this mean? This means essentially that they are speaking of him in his presence. Now, then, Zulaykha continued in this manner. وَلَئِن لَمْ يَفْعَلْ. And if he doesn't do what I have asked him to do, مَا آمُرُهُ, the things that I've asked him to do, if he does not fulfill my request, لَيُسْجَنَنْ, either I will put him into prison, وَلَيَكُونَ مِنَ الصَّاغِرِينَ, and I will also, not either, I will also humiliate him. I will punish him and I will put him into prison. This threat of Zulaykha is different from the threat that he had or that she had when she was in the presence of her husband. If you go back a couple of verses, when they found Potiphar at the door, what did Zulaykha say? Zulaykha said, what is the punishment of Yusuf? Is it either being imprisoned or is it what? Another punishment, another humiliation. أَوْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. But here, you can tell that Zulaykha is really, she can't take it anymore. She is really being fed up with the idea that Yusuf alayhi salam keeps saying no to her. So this time, now that she's speaking to these women, she changes her tone fundamentally again. This time, she didn't say we should do either or. She said, I'm going to do both now. This time, she said, not only am I going to imprison him, I'm going to humiliate him as well if he doesn't say yes to me. This is how this threat was different, number one. Number two, the threat was also different from the first time that she mentioned this threat in front of Potiphar, because this time she says, I'm going to do it myself. Whereas that time in the presence of Potiphar, what she was saying, Potiphar, what are you going to do about this? Now Zulaykha is so fed up, she cannot take it anymore, that she's reached a point where she says, listen, either, if either he responds to this request of mine, or I will take it on myself this time. To not either or this time. I will imprison him and I will humiliate him. See the difference between the threats that are coming from Zulaykha now? It's changing compared to what it was before. And this just shows that every time Yusuf says no, 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 every time this affection, it develops more. Or I should say really this desire, affection, develops more in the heart of Zulaykha. Recite the salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, having said that, I want to take your attention and shed some light on a very delicate point here. We look at the story of Yusuf and we say it's a story where Zulaykha had this love for Yusuf, and because she had this love for Yusuf, she was willing to do anything and everything in order to have that suggestion of hers fulfilled, have that request of hers fulfilled. Okay. And we say that this love was so heavy in her heart that even though she had brought disgrace to her own, to herself, to her family, to her reputation, she was still willing to go ahead with it. And even though the other women in Egypt found out about this, still she was proud, essentially. And at least she wasn't afraid and embarrassed to say, I want to be with Yusuf. Okay. So this love that Zulaykha has, right, that's burning really inside of her heart, seems to be the main issue, the main force, the main, essentially, thing that is pushing her forward in this whole story. But here's the thing. As much as she has this quote-unquote love for Yusuf, then all of a sudden she says things every now and then that kind of gives you the feeling of, does she really love Yusuf? Seems as though she doesn't really love Yusuf. What do I mean by this? When you look at the words of Zulaykha, she put it in a specific manner. She said that I'm killing myself for Yusuf. In other words, I love Yusuf beyond anything you can imagine. But then at the same time she says, وَلَئِن لَمْ يَفْعَلْ مَا أَمْرُهُ, if he doesn't do what I'm asking him to do, لَيُسْجَنَنْ, I'm going to put him in prison and I'm going to ruin his life. Does this sound like love? This doesn't sound like real love. This is not the type of genuine love. Genuine love is the type of love that even though the other person on the other side may not respond to you all the time, you still wish well for them. You still want well for them. But what you find from Zulaykha is not that. It shows that what Zulaykha really had for Yusuf was not love. It was a desire. And because that desire was not being fulfilled, and the person standing in between Zulaykha and that desire being fulfilled was the person who was to fulfill that desire, who was Yusuf, she had this hatred essentially against Yusuf. This was not real love, and this is not genuine love. And this is how you can tell the difference between real love and genuine love, and the type of love that isn't really there, the type of affection that isn't really there. It's the type of affection that really comes from a desire being fulfilled. And if that desire is fulfilled, then the love is there. If that desire is not fulfilled, then the love is gone all of a sudden. You'll have people like this, people in relationships, fathers, not fathers, husbands, wives sometimes. They will love each other. The moment one of them does something wrong, then all of a sudden what happens? Then that love, all of a sudden, it seems as though it vanishes. Well, where's the love that you have for your spouse then? You say, well, she didn't fulfill this desire. He didn't fulfill this desire of mine. I needed this or I needed that and it wasn't there. Well, yes, but you're still supposed to have this deeper layer of love, because a deep love, a real love, it's not dependent on a desire being fulfilled. Right? You love that person regardless of what they do, essentially. Yes, your love might grow, it might increase, or it might come down a little bit based on what they do. That's fine. But essentially, you have a love for this person for who they are, essentially. Even if you don't get something of monetary value out of it, even if you don't get a desire of yours fulfilled out of it, right? Your love is still there. And the difference between this type of love, the fake type of love, which is essentially a desire, and the real type of love, the best way to manifest this is what you find in our dear mothers. And it just happens to also be Mother's Day as well. So I want to take a moment to congratulate our dear mothers on this as well. And what better tribute to them than what you find in the story of Yusuf? Because what you find in Zulaykha is fake love. It's hollow love. The moment Zulaykha doesn't get what she wants, she doesn't love Yusuf anymore. She wants to ruin the life of Yusuf. But a mother never loves their child in this way. A mother sometimes for years and years, they will be looking at their child, waiting for something, waiting to see something from their child, waiting for a request of theirs to be fulfilled by their child. And years after years after years, as much as this child will not pay attention to what their mother has to say, will not pay attention to what their mother has requested, still at the end of the day, you will find that this mother has this love inside of her. This is true love. This is genuine love. This is the type of love that is not based on whether you do everything I say, then I will love you. No, a mother never loves their child in that manner. A mother loves their child even if that child sometimes ends up wronging the mother. And that is the beauty of motherhood, brothers and sisters. That is what makes being a mother so special. Because that love that is at the core and at the essence of a mother is the purest form of love that you will ever find. And that's why in some of our ahadith, when you think about it, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to explain how much He loves His creation, what does He do? Sometimes He will take the love of a mother towards the child, and He will use that to, of course, show that His love is much, much greater, but He will use that to compare His love. He will say, I love you 10 times more, 70 times more, as we have in some ahadith, than your mother loves you, for example. Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using the love of a mother? Because the love of the mother, as it relates to us, is the purest love that you and I can even imagine. And of course, His love is even greater. But if He's going to use anything that He could possibly compare with the love that He has, He's going to give that honor to the love that a mother has in their heart for their child. This is real, genuine love. The type of love that sometimes, all of us are guilty of this to a certain extent, that sometimes our mothers ask us for something. It might be something small at times, or it might be something really big in life at times. But sometimes they wait for 20 or 30 years, and still you will not respond to them. And still you will not pay that attention to them, and still you will not show them that affection. And still at the end of the day, you will find that throughout those 20 or 30 years, not only was your mother loving you, your mother was praying for you. Your mother was worried for you, or your mother was concerned for you. This is why hadith says that heaven lies beneath the feet of a mother. Because the love that she has in her heart is the purest love that you will ever find. That is why it's not comparable to what Zulaykha and the people in Egypt are going to call love. That's not real love. And by the way, in this society that we live in, this is what's being sold to us as love as well. This is what's being sold to our children as love, by the way. That yes, this desire that you have towards someone, that is love. That's not love. Love is something that you find in your mother, that even though you have wronged her so many times, still at the end of the day, when she's praying, when she's doing her salat, she is praying for you. That's what love is. Unfortunately, this word love is used so frequently and so often, it's lost its meaning, unfortunately, within this culture that we live in. But having said that, going back to the verses, you find how this Zulaykha, sometimes she says something, it seems as though she loves Yusuf. But then when she adds to what she has to say, then you realize, oh, she doesn't love Yusuf. She has a desire. If that desire is not fulfilled, no, she wants to ruin the life of Yusuf. And I will also say this, brothers and sisters, there might be a young brother, a young sister, families. Maybe they want to have this situation where the son gets married to the daughter from another family. Maybe it doesn't work out. When it doesn't work out and you're walking away, don't walk away hoping that the life of that person is ruined. Well, it didn't work out. You know, it's not a matter of, you walk away from the situation and you hope that, terrible things happen to that person. No, you walk away and you hope the best for them. Even if they did something wrong, you hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has them realize that what they did was wrong, and then you walk away from them. And that's the most you can do, really, and you leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is someone who wronged you. Maybe someone hadn't wronged you and it just didn't work out. Maybe it worked out for them, between them and some other family. Then it's something that you just sit there and you wish the best for them and you walk away. Because if this person was the person that you said you wanted to get married to before, then that means you had this affection for them and you had this kindness towards them. Then now that that desire of yours hasn't been fulfilled, then you need to show that. And the way you show that is that you don't pray that that person's life is ruined because it didn't work out between you and them. No, you pray that inshallah their life goes well and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you as well. Okay. Inshallah, I'll be wrapping up soon. This was the tone of Zulaykha that was changing every now and then. That sometimes it seems as though she loves Yusuf. Sometimes it seems as though, no, she hates Yusuf with all her guts. It's because she never loves Yusuf. It's just a desire that she has. Okay, moving on from that, the next verse of the Quran says this. قَالَ رَبِّ السِّجْنُ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا يَدْعُونَنِي إِلَيْهِ. Yusuf alayhi salam, the Quran starts to quote him and says that then Yusuf alayhi salam, he turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Did Yusuf speak to Zulaykha? Did Yusuf speak to these women? He didn't even do that. And what we read from the story and from the history and what this verse of the Quran is saying in the dua of Yusuf, it becomes clear that now Yusuf's problem, instead of one being Zulaykha, has now become 100. Why? Because before he had one person, it was Zulaykha that he had to deal with and that he had to distance himself from. Now the problem is all these other women in the gathering, they are also making suggestions towards Yusuf as well. And that is why now that he's praying in this dua, he's praying and he's saying, Ya Allah, prison is better for me. I would rather be in prison than to go ahead with what these women are telling me. That means that now instead of one person suggesting this haram deed to Yusuf, now what's happening? Now all of the women are suggesting this haram deed to Yusuf alayhi salam. So now his burden has been added. But even though his burden has been added, what is he going to do in this situation? Does he even speak to them? No. The verses of the Quran tell us that he did not even turn towards them because he doesn't even see all these women. He doesn't see these. He doesn't see Zulaykha. He doesn't see all of this. إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. He was a purified servant of ours. He would only see God. And that's why in every situation, the first thing he turns to is who? He turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He turned to Allah. He said, I'd rather be in prison. If I'm not in prison, then I would rather not go ahead with what these individuals are suggesting towards me. And then he did something that he also did when Zulaykha initially gave him the suggestion. The other thing that he did was, again, he sought refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You remember when Zulaykha came to him and made that suggestion initially, what did he say? The first thing that Yusuf said is what? He turned to Allah. He said, Ma'ad Allah. Same thing here. He turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. And then he says this, وَإِن لَا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنَّ. If you don't turn away their evil plotting and planning, their manipulating, if you don't turn that away from me, أَسْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ وَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. God forbid I will be amongst the ignorant. God forbid I will be inclined to go ahead with something like this. Would Yusuf do such a thing? No. He is saying, Ya Allah, I am weak. I need your support. I need to be in your refuge if I want to be able to go across and go up against these tests that you are putting in front of me. Again, it's not to say that Yusuf would do it. No, he's just showing that he won't do it, but with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will not do it. It's interesting, in the verses when he was speaking to Potiphar and Zulaykha, he said, if I do this, I will be a wrongdoer. Here, when he is speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, I will be amongst the ignorant. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll explain why is it that Yusuf alayhi salam, when he is speaking to Zulaykha, he says, إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَاي إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. The wrongdoers, the oppressors, they will not reach salvation. Therefore, I will not do this deed, because if I were to do this deed, I would be zalim. I would be a wrongdoer. I would be a transgressor. Why does he speak in that manner? But then when he is speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. If I went ahead with this deed, I would be amongst the ignorant. What difference is there between the two? It's interesting that these terminology, these words that we find in the verses of the Quran, we just read them and we go. But then our mufassirin, they take the time to delve into why Yusuf alayhi salam speaks in this manner, in this particular situation, and why he speaks in a different manner. in a different situation. Inshallah, that we will continue with tomorrow, and also what Yusuf alayhi salam, what lesson we can take from all of these suggestions that Yusuf is getting. Because this is pressure for Yusuf. What is there to be learned from this part of the story of Yusuf alayhi salam? That as good looking as he is, as much as God has blessed him, there's so much pressure in his life. Very important lesson and principle to be learned from that part of Yusuf alayhi salam, the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. I do have to mention this, that tomorrow night we're not going to have the lecture, inshallah. Tomorrow night, of course, will be Monday night. Tuesday night we will have the program. And, Tuesday through Saturday, depending on whether it's the night of the Majalis of Ali ibn Abi Talib or the night of Qadr, some of the nights we'll be talking about the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Some of the nights, of course, we'll be talking on a separate topic, or separate topics, I should say. So just a heads up, and inshallah, we will let you know what the topic is as it relates to each night. Before I end, inshallah, let's take a moment to recite Surah Fatiha again for the marhumin of the sponsors of last night's program and tonight's program, as well as all of your marhumin and marhumat. Brother Nader and Sister Sharmeen Himani and family, Dr. Saqib and Sister Fatima Ibrahim and family, Brother Rizwan and Sister Kiran and family, Brother Sayyid Akbar and Sister Tazeen and family, Brother Hakim and Dr. Asiya and family, Brother Zishan and Sister Minaz Rizvi and family, as well as 4 other Bande Khuda's brothers and sisters, anonymous brothers and sisters, who were kind enough to sponsor tonight's program. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.